Meet Adolf Hitler, a man millions once called Fuhrer, a man who set the world on fire for mad ambition, a man reviled as one of the most evil men to have ever lived. But before Hitler became the man we know today, his life began in the humble, unassuming town of Braunau am Inn, a small town around 30 miles from the Austrian city of Salzburg. Baptized as a Catholic, Hitler's life began with his abusive father, Alois Hitler, born Schicklgruber, a mid-level, unassuming customs official, and his doting mother, Clara. Many to this day believe that Hitler is of Jewish heritage, due to his unknown biological grandfather on his father's side. These rumors began as early as the 1920s during his rise to power, but no evidence has ever revealed any Jewish blood in the Hitler family tree. Likely these were falsehoods spread by his contemporary political opponents that have lingered long after his death. Hitler was the fourth of 6 children born to Alois. Gustav, Ida and Otto would all die in infancy, with Hitler's half-siblings, Alois Jr. and Angela, living with him during his childhood. Although born in Braunau, the family didn't stay there for long. At the age of 3, the Hitler family moved to Passau in Germany. It was here where Hitler would acquire the Lower Bavarian German dialect that would stay with him throughout his life. At the age of 8, the family returned to Austria, living in Leonding in 1894, before moving to Haffeld following his father's decision to retire and become a farmer in 1895. It was in Haffeld that the relationship between father and son would begin to collapse. Hitler steadfastly refused to accept strict Austrian school discipline, resulting in his father beating him frequently. Although his mother spoiled and tried to protect him, it did little to repair the relationship between the young Hitler and his father. Hitler's unstable childhood continued as his father moved the family again in 1897 to Lambach. For a year, Hitler took singing lessons, sang in the church choir, and briefly considered a career in the priesthood. This was followed by yet another move, this time back to Leonding in 1898. It was here that Hitler would experience the first great tragedy in his life. In 1900, his younger brother Edmund, whom he loved deeply, would die from measles. The episode would lead to the young Hitler turning into a detached boy who fought with everyone, from his father to his teachers. The conscientious boy everyone once knew would never return. 2 years later, Hitler, now aged 11, was sent to school in the Austrian city of Linz. Hitler had never wanted to leave, desiring to attend a classical high school and become an artist. His father sent him anyway. Years later, in his autobiography Mein Kampf, Hitler would claim to have intentionally performed poorly as a way to get back at his father and show him that following in his footsteps as a customs official was not the path for him. But it was at school that the ideas that would come to define Hitler grew. Like other Austrian Germans of the time, he became engrossed in German nationalist ideas. Whether it was to fit in with a crowd or to upset his father, a patriotic Austrian, is unclear, but regardless, Hitler did everything in his power as an impressionable youth to express his loyalty to Germany. His friends would greet each other with Heil, a German greeting, insult the Habsburg monarchy that had ruled Austria for centuries, and sang the German national anthem instead of the Austrian. 3 years later, the father he'd always hated would die unexpectedly. Clara would transfer the young Hitler to a school in Steyr, where he would pass the final exams without a clear direction for where he would go next. By 1907, an 18-year-old Hitler moved to Linz permanently to live and chase his dreams of studying fine art in Vienna. Living off orphans' benefits and money from his mother, Hitler twice failed to gain entry to the Vienna Academy of Fine Arts. Because he lacked the academic qualifications, he found all doors closed to him. To make matters worse, his mother would die of breast cancer in the same year, an episode that would leave the young Hitler cold and alone in the world. And things would only go from bad to worse just 2 years later when Hitler ran out of money and was forced to make a living out of being a common laborer and selling watercolors of Vienna. At this time, Hitler lived in and out of homeless shelters. Embittered and without any prospects, Hitler became the perfect funnel for the racist nationalism that would come to define a National Socialist Germany just 20 years later. The first influence was George von Schonerer, and the second was the mayor of Vienna, Karl Lueger. Both promoted pro-German sentiments and cast Jews as the enemy of all classes. It is said that Schonerer gave Hitler the basis of an ideology, and Lueger gave him the strategy to turn it into a reality. But while these were the roots, the angry, murderous form of anti-Semitism that would lead to the Holocaust would not truly emerge until after Germany's defeat in the First World War. For now, Hitler's mundane existence trying to survive on the streets of Vienna continued until May 1913. It was that year Hitler received the final part of his father's estate, allowing him to move to Munich in Germany, where many would say his path to Germany's highest office would truly begin. During this time, Hitler had been receiving orders to report for military service in the Austro-Hungarian army. Hitler finally responded to the third conscription letter. Like all young men, 2 years of national service was legally mandated. In February 1914, Hitler was medically examined and deemed unfit to both bear arms and report for auxiliary duty. Many theories as to why have circulated, ranging from his gauntness to evidence of a lung ailment. Either way, the experience deeply upset Hitler as a blow to his pride and manhood. The young man would return to Munich, further alienated from the country of his birth. Later, he would claim that he failed the examination on purpose due to his desire not to serve the failing Habsburg monarchy. In any other world, this would have spelled the end of Hitler's desire to attain fame or recognition. But just a few months later, the First World War broke out. Once again desiring to fight for the German-speaking world, Hitler voluntarily enlisted in the Bavarian army and was posted to the Bavarian Reserve Infantry Regiment 16. According to a report issued 10 years later by the Bavarian authorities, Hitler should not have been accepted for service due to his status as an Austrian citizen. In any case, Hitler was likely accepted due to either an administrative mistake or an intentional oversight, similar to how British enlistment officers would allow clearly underage boys to join the army. Like other young men, Hitler sought adventure and glory for himself and the German fatherland. He would quickly get his wish. In Hitler's first engagement at Ypres in Belgium, 2,500 out of 3,000 of his regiment were killed, wounded, or missing. Yet Hitler didn't receive a scratch. It was this seemingly divine protection that would save him from countless assassination attempts as Fuhrer that would follow him through the war. On more than one occasion in the war, Hitler would be the sole survivor of engagements and artillery attacks, while his comrades died brutally. As well as his unusual luck, Hitler was known to be an unusual soldier. With no military bearing and general sloppiness at first glance, Hitler was completely unsuited to military life. Yet all surviving accounts mention his bravery and his quickness to volunteer for the most dangerous assignments. As a corporal, Hitler ran dispatches from command centers to frontline units. While not fighting, Hitler would paint watercolors and cartoons or play with a dog he adopted. Adding to his strangeness, Hitler never complained about the food, the horrible conditions, or spoke about women. Nor did he ever request any leave to return to Germany. According to his contemporaries, he was viewed as a likable loner. As the war grew increasingly brutal, Hitler's luck would finally run out in the autumn of 1916. During the Battle of the Somme, Hitler took a shell fragment to the leg. For the first time in 2 years of constant war, Hitler found himself hospitalized in Germany and away from the front. His time away from the war would deeply impact him. After tours of Berlin and light duties back in Munich, he was stunned at the apathetic and anti-war population. Blaming the Jews for undermining the war effort, he requested to return to the front in the spring of 1917. This decision to willingly return to the front at a time when the German cause was seen as hopeless would bring further glory to Hitler. For the duration of the war, Hitler's presence was noted at many of the most famous battles on the Western Front. As well as Ypres and the Somme, Hitler also fought at the battles of Arras and Passchendaele. In August 1918, 2 months before Germany's surrender, he received the rare honor of the Iron Cross First Class, which was a rare achievement for a mere foot soldier. Interestingly, the man who recommended him for this final honor was a Jewish lieutenant named Hugo Gutmann, a fact Hitler would obscure after his rise to power. Yet even with this fifth and final medal, Hitler never advanced beyond the rank of Lance Corporal, with his superiors believing his poor military bearing would fail to command respect from the soldiers under him. But even Hitler himself saw the writing on the wall. During the final months and weeks of the war, Hitler spent most of his time brooding in corners, suffering from uncontrollable outbursts against the Jews and Marxists he believed were costing Germany the war. 1 month before Germany's surrender, Hitler was blinded by a chlorine gas attack near Ypres. Once again hospitalized, Hitler became consumed by hatred as rumors swirled about Germany's impending defeat. His worst fears would come true. On November 10th, 1918, one day before the formal end of World War I, an elderly pastor announced to the hospital that the war was over. Hitler's anger was so furious that he tore at his bandages and suffered a second bout of blindness. In Mein Kampf, Hitler described his reaction. There followed terrible days and even worse nights. I knew that all was lost. In these nights hatred grew in me, hatred for those responsible for this deed. And in him the blame for the war fell solely at the doors of the Jews and the Marxists. With the war over, Hitler would return to Munich, but the old Hitler was dead. Gone were the dreams of becoming a great artist. The war hadn't just given him glory, but a sense of belonging and a sense of purpose. Although still an Austrian in name, Hitler had cast those roots aside. With a firm belief in himself as a patriotic German and a desire to bring the fatherland back to its rightful place, the seeds had been sown that would soon grow into a movement that would sweep the new fragile German Republic's democracy aside. Like millions of other disaffected Germans, Hitler would become part of a movement that would send his country down the path of dictatorship and destruction, and ultimately to its doom. So there we have it. If you have any comments, criticisms, or corrections, let me know in the comments, and I'll see you in the next video.